But I think someone needs to put that. So it was quite a bridge between the East, the Mediterranean and the West. And I sometimes say that while the national boundaries keep changing through the history, but the geography doesn't change. Geography on Earth is the same, more or less. Where the seas are, the landmass area is the landmass area. You can continue to draw boundaries of nations, but the geography of Earth, the continents, is more or less the geography of the Earth. And we, as Indus Valley civilization, as ancient Indian civilization, were connected through geography, and that is why the Greek placement on the map and Indian placement on the map decides how civilizations are going to stay connected. And in that connection, both the sea and the land routes were available. And those connections established how the history will be written, how the exchanges will happen, and how we are going to influence each other. And I'm really not surprised when I think of Indo-Greeks, so-called the Bactrian Empire, which is placed right on the edge of where the India was meeting the other civilizations. So that was the landmass area which represented Bactrian Empire. And Bactrian Empire, one can obviously today look at it from nation-state point of view, the areas which is Afghanistan and Pakistan, part of it Pakistan. And obviously the Greeks were coming from the other side, that was bound to happen. And historically, as the records speak and records say, mostly people tend to look at Alexander as one of the figures which seem to have connected the two countries or the two civilizations. But that is not correct, that is not right. The two civilizations were in touch with each other 200 plus years before Alexander. And 2 centuries before Alexander, we were in touch, and the details can be found all over and through various means. And when we try and discover, say on our side, Panini was one grammarian who was a Sanskrit scholar, and in his grammar, the first time he uses the word Yavana. And then Katyayana, who was 2nd or 3rd century before Christ, 250 BC or something, Katyayana in his works explains that Yavana's language is Yavanani, and how the word Yavana comes into, say, Persian word, Sanskritized word, and the concept of Yavanas being there. And I was listening to the speakers who spoke before me, and they mentioned about Iliad and other such scriptures. I wouldn't call it a scripture, almost a scripture, but the longest poems in the Western world. But would you imagine that Mahabharata in India, which has got more than 100,000 couplets and about 200,000 verses and more than 2.5 million words, mentions Yavana. In Mahabharata you find this word. And the history, the way modern history is understood today, the modern history, I'll still call it modern because it's written by the people who colonized us. So I can also say colonized history. instead of modern history. It's the colonized history, which identifies the interactions between India and Greece to Alexander, or say Mauryan Empire, and Chandragupta Maurya fought a battle with Seleucus I, and in that battle they came across, they lost, and there was a peace treaty between the two, and Seleucus had given his daughter in marriage to Chandragupta, and also the area, the Herat, the Kandahar, and this region of Afghanistan was ceded to Mauryan Empire, and Megasthenes was sent as an ambassador to the court of Chandragupta. Now, Megasthenes' accounts describe India in a certain way. Ptolemy's book, of course, and why you use the word colonized history, because all our literature and some ancient books are lying with the British, and as members of UNESCO, I think we all need to work together to retrieve and exchange our artifacts and books, because we are all signatory to UNESCO Convention. And considering the portfolio I hold right now, is also speaking about UNESCO as two heritage countries who possess longest surviving civilizations. We need to work very closely with each other. And I was just thinking that the idea should be that when this chair starts its work, and I was listening to Professor Bharat Gupta also. Professor has written some books and detailed about Greek theatre. And he was talking about the manner in which the Middle Eastern music was influenced through Central Asia region, but also influenced the Indian music. If we have somebody who's a Sanskrit scholar amongst us, because this is a program and this is a chair which exists in the language department, I would say that the Sanskrit scholar obviously would only be reading the text, but we can work with somebody who's a Samved Pati, like the Acharya of Samved. The Acharya of Samved would be someone who understands the Indian music forms which starts from Vedic period. And Samved is the first Ved which talks about reciting shlokas in a certain tone and in certain time. So that is what music is. How fast you speak or how slow you speak, and when you say a certain thing and certain intonations, which is Samved is the origin of that. Now, Indian music starts to get its form from Samved, and then it starts to get codified. Similarly, the theatre starts to get codified with Natya Shastra, and Natya Shastra gets to be written by Abhinav Gupta and others who put treatise on that. Now, we can look at the influences from the literature, and maybe we should work on some doables, like in next 6 months, this is what we are going to study and do. Next 1 month, we are going to do this. And we should together work on the inscription of some common heritage. It could be intangible common heritage from the music format, or it could be tangible heritage in form of, say, some forts or some art style like Indo-Greek, which is now a part found in Afghanistan, but Mathura school also, which is just a few hundred kilometers from Delhi. We should identify, I think, one small team's job, which is, of course, of the academicians and learned people, not like me, but the learned people can work on identifying the common causes, the common links, the bridge and then work upon it with academic material, other sources, original sources, texts, etc., in each other's literature, and send that as a common inscription. We should do that, because UNESCO has also identified MOSM as one of our projects, and in MOSM is basically weather or climate. Weather is a better word for it. And in India, you would understand that if anyone who understands Indian geography, monsoons are very common. And that is an era we are talking about, the time frame before the steam engines were there. So time which is before the steam engines, we were still using the mechanical boats, or the boats which will be carried to and fro with the help of winds. The trade winds, some people use it, or monsoon winds as we call it. So the monsoons were shipping people from one place to the other, and there's a project with UNESCO which is called MOSM. I would request my friends from, or the academicians who are here, who have greater knowledge of the subject, try to study this and start identifying projects which we can do together, identifiable, and which we can send as common heritage, both intangible and tangible. So it could be the music format, the evolution of music on Indian side, and then how it got influenced by the Greek music, or how it influenced the Greek music. Now, Unani medicine, we can again go back to Vedas, and we can pick on Atharved, that how Ayurveda plus Rigveda became part of Atharveda, and from where the Indian medicine system started. Indian medicine system, before that there is no medicine system. That medical system went out and came back in a certain format with alterations and changes. That could be sent as a common heritage. I think you need to identify some select project in a time-bound manner, and let's start working on those things and send common inscriptions and common heritage. That is what World Heritage is, end of the day, all about. And we should use that as a bridge, as a link between the two countries to establish our ancient relationships, and also the political proximity, and also a narrative which world needs to listen to. Because end of the day, with change in mindsets over centuries, we had some fantastic exchanges in the old times. We were not competing, we would be competing, but were understanding also and working together as well. In modern times, the competition became very different, and the wars took a very different shape and style. And colonizing the mindset is what really transpired. I think as a free nation, decolonizing history, decolonizing the mindset should also be part of our understanding together, because we both stand on as geographical entities, as civilizations, as continuous civilizations who had a lot in common and who still can have a lot in common. With changing times, India trying to get stronger and get its own foothold back in trade, business, and history. I think it's time to work on certain finer aspects of life, on tangible and intangible cultural heritage. I feel this chair, which is Greek chair in very prestigious university in India, would go a long way in not just teaching the language, but language could just be a tool to work with other languages, other philosophies and cultures as it used to be in the old times, and direct the conversation towards narratives which probably are not factual. So working on factual narratives with evidence, with research, is what the languages can do. Language can only be a tool, not a job by itself. And that collaboration must happen between different tools which we need to use. And I'm just probably crossing my line if I say Professor Mazhar Asif, if you study the ancient Persian and the sounds of ancient Persian, not the way it's written, but the sounds it makes, is very similar to Sanskrit. And Greek, of course, so many common words, if I can say common words. So Kendra to Kendros to Kendram, and Kalmam or Kalmos is, uniquely we are together, we are one. And uniquely the coins describe it all. Because one side you will find Pali and the other side you will find Greek. Is what, and if you speak the two a bit slow, probably they sound the same. The speech is the same. It's just that the cases, the writing tools change. So I think if one can do the genomics and other studies, you'll probably find more in common than different. The skin color will be different over even just about a few hundred years. We've been separated for a few thousand years. But the genes will speak the language, that how we are all connected. And I think it's time to find common threads, and we should start working in a time-bound, detailed manner. So my request would be that all the scholars who are here to identify subjects and use that method to give a tangible answer that we can showcase to the world, to UNESCO, and use those platforms to speak about our narrative building also. With these words, thank you very much. JNU.